All right, so imagery and synesthesia. So imagery, by definition, is using vivid descriptive language to appeal to the senses. So a lot of people like to say it's painting a picture. It can be used to build settings, set tone, or portray a character's experiences. So there's 7 types of imagery. There's visual, auditory, gustatory, tactile, olfactory, kinesthetic, and organic. It may look like a lot, but in reality, it's just the 5 senses plus motion and feeling. And to remember it well, you can think of the mnemonic, vain acrobats greeted the other kayaks obnoxiously. So visual is the most common type of imagery. It's creating a visual picture for the reader to mentally visualize. For example, through the window he could see leaves fluttering in the wind, with the tendrils of light snaking around the corner store from the rising sun. The small plaza was starting to fill up with early morning joggers and dressed-up businessmen hurrying to work, with the occasional resident strolling in the cozy park with a cute canine companion. So in this one, you should start to be picturing like a little city or something like that, or a plaza, because that's what I picture. So, so auditory is the second most common, and that's creating a sound for the reader to simulate mentally. For example, his irritation began as he woke up to the obnoxiously loud ringing. Beep, 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 beep. It felt like each ring brought along with it a few more decibels of volume, stinging in his ears more and more and more each time. Finally, his exasperation peaked, and he slammed the alarm clock off his desk under his bed, where it kept ringing. So this is good for like setting or world building or a tone. It's starting to build like an irritated tone. It's going to be a terrible morning, stuff like that. Gustatory, that's taste, most often used for food, obviously. Um, for example, as he took the first bite of the ratatouille, his entire world changed. Remembering his mother's ratatouille from his childhood, he felt the sweet notes of the tomato and onion blending with the rich, creamy sauce. The savory herbs and garlic diffused into the soft zucchini, contrasting in his mouth with the tang of the pepper. So that's some characterization, some setting building, sets the tone as well that he's like floating in outer space right now because he's so happy. So tactile is how something feels, and that's very, very good for immersion. For example, the frigid air attacked his skin, biting away at his exposed arms. The lifeless metal floor grew colder with each step of his bare feet, and the perfectly white snow mocked him as it gently fell around his shoulders, insulting his misery and drawing from his strength even more. So, like, the character's feeling really, really cold, and if you're envisioning that, then you're probably starting to, like, think of the setting, and it just really increases immersion. Olfactory is smell that increases immersion again and creates setting. For example, as he stepped out of the barrack, the pungent odor of death surrounded him. Blood's metallic stench fought to be noticed as the burning haze of smoke filled his lungs, reminding him constantly of the fires and explosions that surrounded him. Each shot he fired blew gun smoke into his face, drowning out the other miseries. So that should be creating like a wartime scene, and just helps really build that setting. All right, so kinesthetic is motion. So that's really good for pacing in a scene. So like a lot of times movie scripts will have kinesthetic imagery for an action scene or something like that. So the first half of the example is going to be like slow paced and the second half is going to be fast paced, and you should be able to see like a difference between that. Neither man moved. The clock stopped ticking. Their eyes stopped blinking, the sweat stopped dripping. The world stopped moving. In this brief moment of respite, both men regretted their hostilities against one another, but it was too late. They lunged at each other mid-thought, grappling in the air to bring each other to the ground. Fists flew as they whirled through the field, which each blow intending to kill. As he geared up to strike his opponent, a straight kick caught him unaware and knocked him away. So, like the first half, until I think too late, was slow, and then after that, it was fast. So finally, there's organic. That creates a sense of feeling, like hunger, emotion. It's really good for like characterization. So, for example, the sensation of hunger was odd for him. Obviously, it felt uncomfortable, but within that discomfort was a nostalgia of sorts. He remembered feeling the same hunger throughout his upbringing, desperately wanting a meal as his brother was born, or even during school when he would ace tests on an empty stomach. How could he hate a feeling he knew so intimately? So that's characterizing the person as probably someone who grew up in poverty, but still smart, things like that. Synesthesia. So synesthesia is a medical condition where, like, if you see red, then you'll taste tomatoes or something. But as a literary device, it's similar, but not exactly the same. It's where you blend one sense with another. So if you're trying to use synesthesia in your like writing, the game plan is like try associating one sense to another, but like it should just make sense intuitively, you know? So, and if that doesn't make sense, I'll try to explain it in the next slide. So, for example, like blue is sad, red is angry, green is sick. If you know, if you said he felt green after eating the tomato with fungus in it, you know, that makes sense because green just feels sick. You can also use senses, like the dog's bark was abrasive. There's no sandpaper being rubbed up against your ear, but it just sounds right. It's like the sensation that you get from one sense translates to another. You can also just add a character that has synesthesia. So if you have someone like smelling musical notes, that's good to show how like musically inclined they are. Or even like common sayings like blinded by love or seeing red. That's probably also good because you don't think of those like as synesthesia, but then when you like analyze it, it is.